journey of self-discovery is one of the most profound and transformative experiences a person can undertake. It begins with a simple, yet infinitely complex question. Who am I? This inquiry lingers in the quiet corners of our consciousness, surfacing in moments of doubt, change, or deep reflection. We spend much of our lives adhering to external definitions, roles assigned by family, society, or career, often losing touch with the essence of who we truly are. To discover yourself is to embark on an excavation of the soul, stripping away illusions, societal conditioning, and self-imposed limitations to reveal the authentic being beneath. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of this journey. It requires honest observation of your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors without immediate judgment. Why do certain situations trigger anger or anxiety? What brings you genuine happiness, not just fleeting pleasure? Are your daily choices aligned with your deepest values? Or are you living on autopilot, conforming to expectations that no longer serve you? This level of introspection can be uncomfortable, even painful, as it forces you to confront aspects of yourself you may have ignored or suppressed. Yet it is only by facing these truths that growth becomes possible. One of the most powerful tools in self-discovery is solitude. In a world that glorifies constant connection and productivity, being alone with your thoughts can feel unsettling. Many confuse solitude with loneliness, but the two are fundamentally different. Loneliness is a sense of lack, while solitude is a deliberate space for self-engagement. It is in these quiet moments, free from the noise of others' opinions, social media, and external validation, that you begin to hear your own voice. Try this. Sit in stillness for just 10 minutes and observe what arises. Do insecurities surface, long-forgotten dreams, unexpressed emotions? These are clues to your inner landscape. Journaling is another powerful method for self-exploration. Writing without censorship allows subconscious thoughts and feelings to emerge. You might start with prompts like, what am I avoiding? When do I feel most alive? What would I do if fear weren't a factor? Over time, patterns emerge, recurring fears, hidden passions, or unresolved wounds that shape your decisions. The act of putting thoughts on paper creates distance, letting you see yourself more objectively. Another critical aspect of self-discovery is curiosity. Many people stop asking questions about themselves once they reach adulthood, as if their identity is fixed. But who you are evolves with every experience, every book you read, every conversation that challenges your beliefs. To rediscover yourself, adopt the mindset of an explorer. Experiment with new hobbies, travel to unfamiliar places, or engage in conversations with people whose perspectives differ from yours. Each of these experiences acts as a mirror, reflecting back parts of yourself you may not have noticed before. Challenging your own beliefs is equally important. We all operate under assumptions about success, relationships, happiness that we've absorbed from culture, family, or past experiences. But what if these beliefs no longer serve you? For example, if you were raised to equate wealth with security, you might have pursued a career for money rather than passion. Questioning these ingrained ideas can be liberating, even if it leads to temporary uncertainty. Ask yourself, do I truly believe this, or was it handed to me? Self-discovery also involves embracing your shadows, the parts of yourself you may deem unworthy, shameful, or weak. Perhaps you struggle with envy, insecurity, or past mistakes that haunt you. The instinct is to hide these aspects, but true wholeness comes from acknowledging them with compassion. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Integrating your shadows doesn't mean indulging in negativity. It means recognizing these traits as part of your humanity and understanding how they influence your behavior. A crucial but often overlooked element of self-discovery is the body's wisdom. The mind can rationalize, deny, or suppress, but the body seldom lies. Do you notice tension in your shoulders when you're around certain people? A sinking feeling in your stomach when you force yourself into situations that don't resonate? Paying attention to these physical cues can reveal truths your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. Practices like yoga, mindful breathing, or even simple walks in nature can reconnect you with this somatic awareness. Finally, self-discovery requires patience. In an era of instant gratification, we expect quick answers. But knowing yourself is a lifelong process. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of breakthrough and moments of regression. This is natural. The goal isn't to reach some final, fixed version of yourself, but to cultivate an ongoing dialogue with your inner world, a willingness to listen, adapt, and grow. As you reflect on these ideas, consider this. What is one small step you can take today to know yourself a little better? Perhaps it's setting aside time for solitude, writing an honest journal entry, or simply asking yourself a question you've been avoiding. The journey begins where you are. The path of self-discovery grows richer and more complex as we venture beyond initial realizations. What began as solitary introspection now expands to encompass how we relate to others, how we find meaning in our existence, and why we often stand in our own way, despite our deepest desires. This middle phase of the journey reveals that knowing oneself cannot be separated from how we engage with the world around us, nor from the silent battles we wage within. Relationships serve as living laboratories for self-discovery. Each person who crosses our path reflects back to us some unexamined aspect of ourselves. The qualities we admire in others often represent latent potentials within us waiting to be awakened, just as the traits that irritate us frequently point to disowned parts of our own psyche. A romantic partner's emotional guardedness might mirror our own fear of vulnerability. A friend's relentless ambition could reflect our own suppressed drive for success. These interactions become most valuable when we pause to ask not why the other person behaves as they do, but why their behavior affects us so deeply. The answers to such questions illuminate hidden corners of our inner world. Yet relationships do more than reveal our shadows. They test our capacity for growth. The moment you choose patience over reactivity with a difficult family member, or vulnerability over defensiveness with a partner, you put your self-knowledge into practice. These daily interactions become the proving ground for your evolving consciousness. Notice, too, how different relationships evoke different versions of yourself. You are not the same person with your childhood friends as you are with work colleagues, and these variations contain valuable information about which aspects of your personality feel safe to express in different contexts. The ultimate goal is not to present a perfectly consistent self to everyone, but to become aware of these shifts and understand their origins. The question of purpose emerges naturally from this relational tapestry. As we shed layers of social conditioning and false identities, we begin to sense a deeper current wanting to express itself through our lives. Purpose is often misunderstood as some grand destiny waiting to be discovered, when in truth, it is more like a quality of being that infuses whatever we do with meaning. The teacher who sees her work as shaping young minds lives differently from one who merely delivers curriculum. The difference lies not in the external actions, but in the internal orientation. Discovering this orientation requires listening beyond the noise of shoulds and expectations. There are clues in the activities that make time disappear for you, in the problems that stir your indignation, in the kinds of conversations that leave you energized rather than drained. Purpose often lives at the intersection between what the world needs and what you uniquely can offer. A corporate lawyer might find her true calling in advocating for environmental policy. A nurse might discover his deepest fulfillment in mentoring new healthcare workers. These are not radical life changes, so much as shifts in perspective that allow one's existing skills to serve a more personally meaningful aim. Resistance inevitably arises when we approach these deeper layers of self-discovery. It manifests as procrastination, self-doubt, sudden fatigue, or the endless rationalizations for why now isn't the right time to change. This resistance is not the enemy it appears to be, but rather a protective mechanism that deserves understanding. Every transformation requires the death of some former self, and the psyche instinctively resists this loss, even when the change would be beneficial. The person who dreams of writing a novel, but never starts, may be resisting not just the effort required, but the redefinition of identity that would come with becoming a writer. Working skillfully with resistance involves both compassion and strategy. The first step is simply to recognize it without judgment, to notice when you're avoiding that meditation cushion or talking yourself out of applying for that dream job. The next is to investigate what fear lies beneath the resistance. Often it's some variation of the core belief that we are not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. These beliefs usually formed in childhood as protective adaptations, and they persist because at some level they worked. The adult task is to thank these defenses for their service, while gently updating them to reflect current reality rather than past wounds. Moments of crisis often accelerate self-discovery, precisely because they disrupt our normal resistance patterns. The loss of a job forces re-examination of career assumptions. A health scare brings mortality into sharp focus. While painful, these ruptures create openings for new ways of being to emerge. The key is to meet such moments not just as problems to be solved, but as invitations to deeper alignment. What if this illness is asking me to slow down? What if this relationship ending is creating space for more authentic connections? Such questions transform suffering from something to be endured into a catalyst for growth. The integration of these discoveries into daily life marks the difference between intellectual understanding and embodied wisdom. It's one thing to realize you need better boundaries, another to actually say no to that demanding friend. This implementation phase requires both courage and kindness toward oneself. Lasting change happens through small, consistent actions more than dramatic gestures. The person learning to express anger healthily might start by naming irritation in low-stakes situations before tackling deeper resentments. The recovering people-pleaser could practice small acts of assertiveness with service staff before addressing family dynamics. Each step forward in self-discovery inevitably reveals new horizons to explore. Just when you master setting boundaries, you might encounter the challenge of doing so without guilt. Having clarified your purpose, you may then face the test of staying true to it amid competing demands. This ongoing process is not a flaw in the journey, but its very nature. The self is not a static entity to be uncovered once and for all, but a dynamic unfolding that continues throughout our lives. The tools for navigating this terrain remain consistent even as the challenges evolve. Mindful awareness to observe without immediately reacting, journaling to clarify thoughts and patterns, trusted relationships that provide both support and honest reflection, and above all, the willingness to meet each new layer of discovery with curiosity rather than judgment. As we prepare to examine the transcendent dimensions of self-discovery in the final segment, consider what relationships in your life currently serve as your most revealing mirrors. Where do you sense a gap between your daily actions and your deeper purpose? What form does your resistance most commonly take? And what might it be protecting? The most profound paradox of self-discovery awaits at journey's end. The realization that true knowing of oneself inevitably leads beyond the self. After peeling back layers of conditioning, examining relationships, confronting resistance, and clarifying purpose, we arrive at this threshold. The understanding that who we fundamentally are cannot be contained within the narrow boundaries of personal identity. This is where the path turns inward and outward simultaneously, where the river of self-awareness finally merges with the ocean of universal consciousness. This transcendent dimension often emerges unexpectedly, in moments when we're so absorbed in an activity that all sense of separate self disappears. The artist who becomes one with the creative flow, the nurse whose compassionate actions arise without conscious thought, the parent whose love expresses itself instinctively during a child's crisis. These are all glimpses of what lies beyond ego. Such experiences share common qualities: the vanishing of the inner critic, the collapse of perceived time, and actions that seem to move through us rather than from us. Afterward, we might say, "It wasn't really me doing that," pointing to a profound truth about the nature of being. The spiritual traditions of the world have long recognized this destination, though they describe it differently. Non-dual teachings speak of the illusion of separation. Mystical Christianity describes union with the divine. Buddhist psychology explains the empty nature of the self. Modern neuroscience now confirms what contemplatives have always known, that our sense of being a separate, continuous self is more constructed than real, a useful fiction maintained by the brain rather than an absolute truth. This doesn't mean the personal self doesn't exist at all, but that it exists as a temporary, fluid expression of something far vaster. Practical implications of this understanding ripple through daily life. When we operate from this expanded awareness, conflicts transform. We can disagree with someone while still recognizing our fundamental connection. Career choices shift from "what's best for me" to "how can I best serve?" Even suffering takes on new meaning when understood as part of a larger tapestry rather than just personal misfortune. This perspective doesn't eliminate life's challenges, but changes our relationship to them, like watching storm clouds from a mountaintop rather than being caught in the downpour. Many fear that transcending ego means losing motivation or personality, but the opposite proves true. When we're no longer driven by fragile self-image, our authentic gifts express themselves more freely. The musician plays not for applause, but for love of music itself. The teacher teaches not to feel important, but because sharing knowledge brings joy. This is the difference between ego-driven action and soul-inspired expression. One drains energy, the other renews it. The path to this realization varies. For some, it comes through dedicated meditation, the systematic quieting of mind chatter that reveals the awareness beneath thoughts. Others arrive through service, losing themselves in helping until the boundary between helper and helped dissolves. Nature often serves as a powerful mirror. Standing under starry skies or beside crashing waves, our small selves momentarily forgotten in awe. Even intense suffering can become the gateway. When all strategies for maintaining our familiar identity fail, what remains is often more real than what was lost. Integration of this understanding into modern life requires balancing transcendence with earthly responsibilities. We learn to pay bills from this expanded awareness, parent from it, work, and create from it. The challenge lies in maintaining connection to this depth amid daily distractions. Certain practices help, beginning each day with silent remembrance, using routine activities as mindfulness anchors, creating simple rituals that reconnect us to presence. Over time, the distinction between spiritual practice and ordinary life begins to fade. Relationships transform when seen from this vantage point. We stop demanding that others fill our inner voids, recognizing that no external connection can substitute for the fundamental wholeness we discover within. This paradoxically allows for deeper intimacy. When two people relate from fullness rather than lack, love becomes less about need and more about celebration. Even difficult relationships become opportunities to practice seeing the essential beyond the personality, to respond rather than react. The question of legacy naturally arises from this expanded perspective. When we know ourselves as expressions of something larger, our concern shifts from "how will I be remembered?" to "how can I contribute to the ongoing flow of life?" This might manifest as environmental stewardship, mentoring younger generations, creating art that outlasts us, or simply bringing more kindness into each interaction. True legacy stems not from ego's desire for immortality, but from love's impulse to give without thought of return. As this journey of self-discovery completes its arc, we find ourselves back where we began, but everything has changed. The initial question, "Who am I?" now yields not a fixed answer, but a living mystery. We discover that identity isn't something to possess, but a process to participate in, not a noun, but a verb. The separate self we set out to understand turns out to be more like a wave on the ocean, appearing distinct, yet never actually separate from the vastness beneath. Yet this isn't an end point, but a new beginning, the start of living from this understanding in ordinary moments. Making breakfast becomes sacred when done with full presence. Listening becomes worship when offered without agenda. Each breath becomes a reminder that we're both the individual and the totality, the drop and the ocean. This is the secret hidden in plain sight all along. That self-discovery was never about building a better ego, but about remembering our true nature. Perhaps the final discovery is that there are no final discoveries, only deeper layers of mystery to embrace. The more we know, the more we recognize how little we know, and this humility becomes our greatest wisdom. The seeker dissolves into seeking itself. The questioner merges with the question, and what remains is simply life, living itself through us, as us, in this ever-unfolding moment.